I really like the first version of the XF24 and I've used it on numerous professional shoots such as documenting refurbishment projects. So it's only right that I look at the Mark II, but I wasn't initially that excited by it, but I completely understand the reasoning behind it now. Thanks to restrictions in the UK at the moment, I haven't been able to travel with this lens or shoot with it professionally, of course, but you know, some random local tourism has took place over the last month with this lens and I've quite enjoyed it. So let's take a look at it up close, throw up some of those random samples, have a chat about it in the conclusion, and then I'll see you in the comments below to see what you think about it. Let's crack on. So that 10-24 is a full frame equivalent of 15 to 36mm with an angle of view of 110 degrees to 61.2 degrees. We've got an aperture ring here now, which is very welcome and feels very nice. So that runs from f4 to 22 and you have the auto 2 and you've got a little lock button on the side to keep that in place, although I'll be using the aperture ring a lot more than that, that's for sure. Now the zoom ring does feel nice, doesn't feel like it's going to slip out at any time. The manual focus ring is smooth, but it's not particularly exciting. But if that's your thing, I don't think you'll be too disappointed in practical use, although obviously it's not as big. But I think this is really designed for autofocus shooters, I would say. You've got built-in OIS, you've got weather resistance, a minimum object distance of 24 centimeters. Let's take the hood off there. We've got a 72mm filter thread and that is it. Business as usual. Nice solid build. 385 grams is not bad at all. £899 retail. There's a question for you. Is it worth going for this one over Mark I, which has the same internals effectively? That is a very interesting question. Some of you can't live without this aperture ring, for example, and I get that. But yeah, I'm going to have a little play and we'll talk about it in the comments below, as well as the conclusion, of course. So stick around for the conclusion. Having used this over the last month, I can say I still really love the original 10-24, but this model is clearly the way forward. In keeping with the rest of the lineup, the mainly metal build quality is excellent. A welcome change is that this one is 20 grams lighter, albeit a little bit longer than the previous lens, but it's a very familiar experience if you've used that other model. Naturally, it balances better on the larger bodies like the XH1 and so on, but with proper handling, it's fine even on something smaller like the S10 with its nice fat grip, or the T30, in fact. After some use, the aperture ring still feels spot on. It's clearly a welcome addition. Now the lens offers up to 6.5 stops image stabilization. Apparently it's improved over the previous. I need to look into that a little bit more. I haven't noticed too much of a difference just yet, but it all still seems as great as it ever was. Now if you're tempted to try narcissistic vlogging with it, it's a great focal range of course, but due to the nature of the lens at 10mm with IBIS and OIS, you still might not be saved from those wobbles. Now, as I tend to do, I took it with me on a walk around the park, you know, just for kicks. And like the previous times I tried with the other version, I just couldn't get the right experience. But I would definitely use it as a hybrid shooter on my travels, you know, less narcissistic stuff, albeit, frankly, I prefer smaller setups when I travel, when being the key word. The autofocus is nice and snappy. It's not a huge concern for most of the times that I use this lens, but it's welcome nonetheless. As we've said before though, the manual focus ring, it's not really a forte of this lens, but to be honest, for me at least, it wasn't a bad experience. I'm happy to note that there's no lens breathing. The internal zoom works very nicely. Everything's just as I hoped on that front. Of course, it's the same glass, so we're still getting very detailed images, excellent center sharpness right from f4, maybe a little bit soft in the corners. It performs best at the front end, 10mm, with relatively no fringing and minimal distortion. Taking it to 24mm can be a little bit disappointing if we're being critical, but it's still very usable. Interestingly, aperture-wise, the sweet point is around f8, f7.1, there or thereabouts, which is absolutely fine with this lens. For me, the lens is spot on for landscape, travel photography. It's actually a very flexible lens, and you can use it for things like interiors too, of course, as I did with the previous model. But do you need weather resistance and an aperture ring? Well, maybe so. I completely get that. I don't think this lens will disappoint. In fact, you could probably argue it's the lens it always should have been. Now, for the rest of us, would a mint second-hand copy of the previous version suffice? It's definitely an option. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that lens if you don't need weather resistance, aperture ring, and that 20 grams saving. So which would you use? Which do you use? Would you go from the previous to this version? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe so we can keep putting out videos. Stay safe and see you very soon.